It is a pretty honest conversation, one which will leave us, as we're talking about this stuff on the panel here, somewhat vulnerable, because a lot of the things that we're talking about, we don't talk about as a society at large. And I think what we're talking about today affects creative folks in some very different ways. And I just wanted to say a couple of things, sort of, housekeeping here. I've tried to ask questions and to direct this in a sort of two-part way, because talking about mental illness and struggles, anxiety, recovery, there can be a certain kind of darkness around that, and I don't want to leave you folks in the audience feeling hopeless. I want there to be some hope. So I've divided our conversation on my line of questioning and the music that we're going to share today in two parts. One is what I call dissonance, and sort of identifying the struggles. And the second part, after we deal with some questions from you, which we really welcome, and your ability to kind of share your own experiences. The second part is going to be what I call harmony, at least our efforts to find it. We want you to leave here with a sense of hope that we all have, in spite of the struggles and darkness that we've gone through. So, I'm just going to hit right into it. I'm going to get right into it here. And again, there's going to be a time for questions, so I will open it up in about a half an hour here, but we're going to try and get through everybody and have them play a song for you as well as we're talking. So my first question is for Justin Pierre. I'm guessing you folks know him from Motion City Soundtrack and Farewell Continental. We're not going to talk about all of our illustrious careers or some of your illustrious careers.
You can
on
keep
stage.
going.
We're really going to talk about some heaviness that is more about just being a human being here. So my first question, Justin, admitting that you have a problem is often considered the first step towards tackling it. Some of us with mental health issues can function for long periods denying we have issues or hide the symptoms from the world. Was there a single moment or a series of moments when you became conscious that your life was out of control, out of balance, or that you were experiencing emotional pain? Can you describe that realization and how you felt?
I would say that the moment that it occurred to me that my life was out of control was ages 16 to 30. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many. I feel like I could talk about each and every one of the issues that we're talking about tonight because I think I fit the bill. And I would say that a big turning point for me, I've been pretty much open in the music that I'm writing, kind of telling my story in segments over the years, so I feel like people can piece things together. But there was a moment in 2007 where I had gotten into the habit of, I'd go on tour, I'd be sober, and then as soon as I'd get off of tour, it was just like binge until I have to go on tour again.
Drinking or
drinking,
substance
anything,
use?
Yeah, pretty much all of it. And there was a moment where I could usually pull it together. I'd show up at the airport and it would be a horrible scene, but then within 2 or 3 days, I'm back, on track. And then I woke up and my dad was there and Josh Kane, my band member, was there, and I was like, wait, how did I get here and why are these people here and what is happening? And over the course of the next few hours, I talked to Brett Gurewitz, who is the owner of our label, and he had let me go to his house a couple years ago and basically just kick drugs in his extra bedroom, and I soiled the sheets and it was a bad scene. And so he was kind of a second father of sorts, and I just called him and I said, I need to do something and I don't know what to do, and I had 2 choices ahead of me. I could have gone to a luxury sort of, hotel treatment center, or I could go to this place that I had gone to before and I kind of knew people and I knew that I just felt like they would look at me, and be like, you didn't make it, you know. And I was just so scared, and he told me that I think you know what you need to do. And that was the first time I ever made a decision that was, like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do the hard thing. I'm gonna go to this place that scares me. And from that point on, it took a few more years, but, you know, I haven't had a drink since January of 2010. But it took me, thanks. You know, but from that moment forward, I was really trying to get there, and I had a few screw-ups along the way. But yeah, so I think that was the moment. I'm sorry if that was long-winded, but
No, that's great. What I'm going to ask you to do now, Justin, is to go into your memory banks here and maybe pick a song that either sort of identifies the problem or maybe your realization of what you needed to do to get better.
And play it?
If you could do that for us, that would be awesome. Did anyone else have anything to add to what Justin said about his experience?
Nope. All right. I already had the capo on, so this is it's kind of pre-planned. I think this song in particular, it's off our third record. It's called "Even If It Kills Me," and I'm gonna move this a little bit. This song was written during a sober moment, but I feel like it's kind of about being in that moment of like wanting to get better and knowing that you're going to do, you know, I guess whatever it takes to get there, even though you don't know exactly how you're gonna get there. I've got a lot of things to do tonight. I'm so sick of making lists of things I'll never finish. I've lived here for the last 12 years. Since early 1995, all my shit has been in boxes. But if I had a little more time to kill, I'd settle every little stupid thing. Yeah, you'd think that I would, but I'm too tired to go to sleep tonight, and I'm too weak to follow dreams tonight. For the first time in a long time, I can say I wanna try to get better, overcome each moment in my own way. I wonder if I'll ever lose my mind. I tried hard for a while, then I kinda gave up. Winter is a killer and the sun goes down. I'm really not as stubborn as I seem. Set the knuckle to the concrete, but I'm too tired to go to sleep tonight, and I'm too weak to follow dreams tonight. For the first time in a long time, I can say I wanna try to get better, overcome each moment in my own way. I'm not saying that I'm giving up. I'm just trying not to think as much as I used to. Never is a lonely little messed up word. Maybe I'll get it right someday. For the first time in a long time, I can say I wanna try I feel helpless for the most part, but I'm learning to open my eyes. And the sad truth of the matter is I'll never get over it, but I'm gonna try to get better and overcome each moment in my own way. I so wanna get back on track, and I'll do whatever it takes, even if it kills me.
Thanks, Justin. It's kind of a nice added benefit here that you get to hear people's songwriting and listen to their process and talk about that. I just wanted to say one other thing that I kind of forgot to mention, which is that our experiences that we have and that we're sharing on stage may be different from yours, different from each other on stage, in some cases, from how you might interpret things that we're saying. This is the nature of conversation, and misinterpretation is one of the risks of a conversation about a really sensitive topic. And I just wanted to say up front, none of us are experts about the things that we're talking about. We've got experts at the school, and we've got an expo of experts and resources out in the lobby when we're done here. But really, this is just an opportunity for us to kind of share our own perceptions of our own experiences. Holly. Artists are often mythically treated as what I might call obligatory martyrs. The cliche is that pain creates great art. And yet, we as a culture still treat mental illness as something to be ashamed of. Were you reluctant to look for assistance from friends, family, or mental health experts? And or did you feel maybe that this condition, if I can call it that, was your burden as a creator of art and perhaps something that might have benefits?
Interesting question. I think that it's a little bit of both, because I know that personally I write a lot from suffering and struggle. That's naturally when I feel compelled to start writing, which I actually almost always found a little disturbing to myself, because I thought, music shouldn't only, magnify the darkness of the world, and I always hoped someday I could write a song that would magnify the light things. And so I think I went through a really hard period, for the most part, right when Zoo Animals started. So a lot of those first records were very heavy. And I think the culture that surrounds music doesn't make mental illness seem weird. So I could be in a horrible place and be living really unhealthily, but when you go play music, a lot of times the environments you're in match that. And so until I would go hang out with my friends who weren't in music, I wouldn't realize how different my life was compared to theirs, and realize in a way, in that environment, I was almost, maybe, I don't know, ashamed is almost a strong word for it, but shy about what my life really looked like around them, because it's not like I felt like I was in a bad place. I just thought they might think I was, because for me, where I was mostly, it was a very normal part of life to live sort of in a haze, and there's not a lot of just inherent self-worth. It's all about what you do on stage, and it's almost like when you're walking around in those places, you're wearing the name tag of your band, and that's kind of where you get your self-worth from. It's not necessarily that Holly, she's a great person. You don't really hear that kind of talk in music that much. And so I think when I was with my friends who were doing the similar type of lifestyle, it just didn't even occur to me that possibly I was living a damaging cycle. And when we talk about this poster child thing, speaking on this panel, I don't think anyone would be like, oh, I've heard Holly's mentally ill or has a substance problem, but I definitely think that most musicians have experienced that, and I would say especially because I think I maybe am known for having like intensely emotional music. I would almost wear that badge, like almost like a war veteran, like I know how to suffer. Like you don't even understand. Like, and like that wasn't like I would actually say that, but you do almost get put on a pedestal, like with the idea of how much can you affect an audience and how much can you get at them. That is like a skill that people look up to. And so there was definitely, you know, there's that whole tortured artist idea. And I think people would like, they joke about that to you. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think it just depended on what group I was hanging out with for like how comfortable I was talking about my regular lifestyle, I guess.
Holly, I didn't introduce you as the sort of lead singer-songwriter of Zoo Animal. Maybe you've got a song that might resonate with that, or maybe sort of the identification of your own struggles in your process here.
I do. And it's actually a lot of it's about, this song is a lot about seeing each other struggle and not doing anything about it and acting like the harder you struggle. And there is that idea that the deeper your valley goes, the higher the more water's in your river. That's kind of like a thing you hear. I mean, I grew up, I have a lot of religious background, so that's compounded too with the idea that suffering creates almost like a sanctification process. So that's kind of what this song touches on a little bit. Cool. I'm going to try sitting. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. No, I already can tell. I can already tell. I've tried to sit and sing so many times.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's just awkward. Run me into a wall. Cause I'm out losing my mind. Drought makes the roots grow deeper and deeper till you pass the earth's crust and you're soaking in molten lava. If you'd have pushed a little harder, I would have fallen, 'cause I'm black and I'm charred. I'm black and I'm charred. Run him into a wall. 'Cause he's out losing his faith while you're home, losing your mind. Drought makes the roots grow deeper and deeper till you pass the earth's crust and you're soaking in molten lava. If he'd have pushed a little harder, he wouldn't have fallen, 'cause he's black and he's charred on tips. 'Cause I'm black and I'm charred on tips.
That's thank you. That's Johnny Solomon on the end over there, and next to him is Molly Moore, and they're both from a group called Communist Daughter. And I'm going to ask Johnny this question first, which is, as musicians, we often experience a lot of stress. Stage anxiety, tracking all of the moving parts of our career, heightened expectations and disappointments, the loneliness and isolation of the road and touring, the pressure to create meaningful work that has an audience, and of course, finances. Can you tell the difference between normal stress and your reaction to maybe more intense problems or issues that you're struggling with? And how does that feel? Maybe you can kind of talk about how that feels or how that manifests itself in your life.
Yeah. Is it? I guess I should go into a little bit of background before I explain my situation and answer that question. I feel like I'm on a game show. I'll answer in two parts, Adam. I'm a recovering addict, an alcoholic, and I'm also bipolar, and I actually found that out through going to treatment. And so I've been dealing with that co-occurring disorders. And when I had to kind of come to terms with my addiction problems by realizing that I was bipolar, and one of the things that they talk to you about when you're getting sober is being able to, you need to be able to talk about all your decisions and kind of how you feel, because a lot of times the way that my brain works is that it kind of misfires a little bit, and when I think I'm making decisions that are okay, I tend to sometimes be making some pretty bad decisions. And a lot of that is because addiction and mental illness, it's a brain disease, in the sense that it's hard to explain, because all I know is my reality, and when I think I'm acting normal, I can't explain that. Somebody else has to tell me that that's not a normal action, or that's not a normal reaction to something. And it took me a long time to realize that it was okay to be honest with people around me, so that they could be honest with me and tell me things like, you're abnormally angry about, and when stress would come in with my life, with all of those things, it would manifest itself in a lot of anger and wildness, the feeling of like this pent up energy, and I thought that was a lot of just being young and being an artist and being a musician and expressing myself was wildness and feeling emotion to its core. When those things started to really affect my life and I started to chase some of those feelings, that's when I had to step back. And I mean, obviously the addiction, when that came in, a lot of that was me dealing with those wild emotions and the wild stress, and I would get stressed that I couldn't get out of. And so I think now, as I progress, number one, I'm on medication, and I think that that's something that, as an artist, everyone, you're afraid to know something different than what you know as an artist. Like if somebody told me you're acting too wild, or you're getting too angry, or you're too depressed, you need this medication. And as an artist, I want to say, I want these feelings. I need these feelings to create. And what I found out through being on medication and being sober is that actually it was a step in a whole new direction of it was like instead of being a detriment, it was an opportunity to be a better person, a better musician, a better, suddenly I could connect thoughts better, and I could explain feelings better. And I still struggle with it, and especially with bipolar disorder, with touring, you don't sleep much when you tour, and that's a real bad thing for somebody with bipolar disorder, because my body rhythms start to get off, and a lot of times it's okay now that Molly and she's been through this process with me, and sometimes she, says very kindly, but she has to say, hey, how you doing? Maybe have you taken your medicine? Because it's you got to take it every day, or hey, you're being a little angry about things, or there will be times where, especially lately, I'm working on a record where I made the best record, and then the next day I'll be the most depressed ever, and it's the worst, and how can I be a musician? And Molly just has to remind me, that you feel that, but a lot of that is, part of the process of, up and down. So that's kind of where I find people say it's a constant struggle, but I actually find that it's a constant struggle was before. Now I'm building something better, and I feel a lot better about building it.
You kind of brought Molly into the conversation, and I'm going to do that with this next question. You're joining today to largely talk about your relationship and your connection with a partner who's had these sorts of struggles. And I just wanted to know how do you maintain sort of care for yourself as well as provide support to Johnny, and how do you create boundaries in that relationship? Have Johnny's struggles helped you understand yourself more and maybe examine your own mental health?
Yeah, I had to learn a lot. And when I first, I really, since I met Johnny, we've been friends for probably 4 years, and in a serious relationship for 3 more.
Yeah.
And we're getting married a week from tomorrow. Pretty crazy. But it's certainly been an interesting journey. Not only, at first when we were going through, when Johnny decided to go to treatment, I don't know, things were really, really crazy there for a while, and I was along for the ride, and it was really hard on me, but it was like it wasn't my problem, so it was hard for me to express what was going on with me, and there's a lot of also running away from those feelings and feeling numb, and not feeling like I wasn't the one with the problem, so for me to approach someone and talk to someone about what I was going through it was challenging for me, because I felt almost like guilty because I wasn't the one with the problem, so why do I have a problem? I don't know, but in that journey of him getting help in treatment and getting on medication, and I really learned a lot about myself, and I really grew as a person, and the whole experience actually was, it really strengthened me as a person, and I've found a lot of very helpful tips for life. When John was in Hazelden, I had the opportunity to take a class called the Family Program at Hazelden, and it was seriously life-changing. I mean, it was like, I mean, even if you weren't in a relationship or you didn't have a family member that was an addict or an alcoholic, there's so many great life tips and things that I just think everyone should take this class.
It's an Al-Anon.
It's an Al-Anon kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I learned a lot about myself as a person, and I went to counseling for a little while. I really felt like I lost myself, and I found myself again. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going around in a circle. I don't know if I'm really answering the question, but
it's all good, Molly. I'm going to ask for both you and Johnny to play a song, and maybe sort of tell us about this. Is this one that kind of identifies the problem, or?
Yeah. Well, Molly mentioned I went to Hazelden, which I can't recommend enough. I think that people, one of the things, it's a really hard thing to admit that you have a problem. But as I said before, I now know that was an opportunity instead of a problem. It was to finally admit that, I'm not living a life that is positive. Then I had the opportunity to change to a positive life. And I got the opportunity to go to Hazelden, which I think Sarah said that they might be out in the part of the expo. And they were, like Molly said, they were life-changing for her and life-changing for me, because there was a lot of, they were just really respectful about the problem, and it's something to be an artist and be very scared that when you're giving up your struggle, you're going to be giving up your art. And I think that was that's what kind of this song is about, is trying to give up the struggle. And there's a lot of things you learn in 12-step programs. You don't have to go to treatment to get sober, but if you really feel like you have a problem, it's definitely worth checking into. But one of the things that they talk about, you find what works for you, and one of the things that they had a saying for me, because I do have a higher power of sorts, and say let go and let God. It was kind of a mantra of letting go of my struggle so that I can find something else. And so this is a song I actually wrote while I was there in treatment. It was a few years ago, and it was that winter where it was snowing so much, and I checked in in December, and so I spent all the holidays there and Christmas at Hazelden. It was a magical time, let me tell you. So
late December, cold. I remember ghosts let me know when they get to heaven. I let go and God lets me forget them. Heaven, my heart home, this time I let in. Late December, snow. I remember I let go and God lets me forget them. Giving my heart home each time I let in. Well, I'm not old, but I'm not young. I'm not a martyr if I run. And I've got a lot of years if I get 'em. Well, I'm not old, but I'm not young. I'm not a martyr if I run. And I've got a lot of years if I get 'em.
Thanks. I just want to point out that we were sitting down when we did that, so.
It was awkward.
Nice work sitting down. I want to open it up to questions. We're about halfway or a little over halfway through, and I want to hear some questions from people. I see a hand that's gone up there, an orange T-shirt back there.
Oh,
Coral,
nice.
thank you.
Salmon. Are you talking anxiety or stage, or? Okay.
Like all the time anxiety?
Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the time, every time. I don't know. Oh gosh. I don't know where to begin. Does anyone else have? I'll think for a second.
I will say I have an interesting way with anxiety because I don't actually have stage fright at all. But when it comes to every other interaction before and after a show, I'm a mess. And I think a funny thing that happens when you're a performer is a lot of performers are introverts. And I think that's because for one time, they don't have to talk over anyone to say something. It's like, and I think a lot of artists are like that, where then you have to go to the merch table afterwards and you're just like, I mean, sometimes it's like somebody needs change. I don't remember what 4 minus 2 is. It's just, and I think one thing for me, always take a moment to yourself in between everything. I mean, it's like even before I talk to my band, I'm just gonna take a moment, not to like build up what's happening, but just say, okay, now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk over to that table and I'm going to sell merchandise. Okay. And then another thing that's helpful is having consistent people with you that make you feel calm. Hopefully that's someone that you play with, or it's like a sound engineer, or, you know, and if you can't have that, I think you kind of do need to learn to be that for yourself. But I think that's one reason why sometimes it's good to have friends who aren't musicians, who maybe live a healthier lifestyle than most musicians. I have one of my best friends, she was around a lot when I first started playing, and I think if it weren't for her, I would have quit 4 years ago, just because sometimes there's so much going on in your brain when you're a performer, and the thing you really care about is being on the stage doing that thing, but there's like 700 other things that have to happen in order for that to go on. So having someone around, or, you know, and even planning ahead, even though most artists don't do that, it's a really good idea. That's some of my experience with it.
Good question. Justin, did you want to say something?
Sure, I'll try to make this brief, but I won't. I think just the way, here's the thing, it's like doing this thing specifically terrifies me. And I've been trying to, in the last few years, do more of these things that terrify me, because I have a thought that, okay, well, maybe I'll just get better at it, you know, by doing so. I don't feel like I'm an introvert, but I kind of am, but it's just, I want to sound amazing when I talk to people, and I want people to hear the words that I say when I have a conversation and just blow their minds every time. And my natural mind is just always kind of racing, and there's all these things going on, so it's hard for me. I'm much more eloquent when I can sit down and spend a day writing things out and preparing. And so that's the kind of, I guess, anxiety I get. And I don't take any medicine, and I don't really do anything for the things that I may have. But I've gotten to a point where, we kind of talked about this, we had a meeting where we all kind of hung out, and my way of coping with anxiety in general, I don't know if it is anxiety or what it is, but it's like I get worked up and I'm doing all these things and I'm running all around and my mind just gets a little too fast, and then suddenly I can't turn it off. And what I end up doing is, if I can realize it ahead of time, I'll just stop what I'm doing and play video games or watch a movie for an hour just to like let it go, and then go back to what I'm doing. Otherwise, if I don't catch it, what I usually end up doing is I lie down on the ground and I just let my mind go for 2 hours, and I can't move, and it sucks. But it used to be days of just not being able to get off the floor, but now I've got it down to like an hour or two, and then I'll wait until my mind is kind of settled down, and then I'll just jump up and start doing the dishes or something and kind of trick myself. So that's kind of how I deal with my anxiety.
Another question. Blue shirt right there.
Well, that's something that, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big worry, I guess, as being a sober musician now. I definitely put a lot more weight on when I was on the other side of things and saying, well, if I got sober, it would, I'd lose that gift. Where now, being on the other side of it, you realize that I think a lot of that is just you trying to not get sober. And I mean, I think that the anxiety of whatever people are going to think, I know that my art's growing, and if people think that it's not as good because I'm sober now, it's like, well, you kind of have to just let that happen, because no matter what, you're getting older, and your art's, everyone's always going to say that they liked your early stuff. So I think, though, just as somebody who has to find that creative space, that it was so much easier to be raw, emotional before, that I think now it took a while to retrain how to be how to find my inspiration, but I think I'm 4 million times better off, so I don't worry about it now as I used to worry about it on the other side of things. I mean, Molly will catch me every once in a while being like, I don't know if I can write anymore, but I think that's every songwriter probably has that feeling, probably every other day. So,
is there another question? Right there.
How do you deal with the fear of losing control again?
Good question.
This may be horrible advice, but I both don't think about it. And what really helped me, and this is in terms of just like drinking, what really helped me was procrastination is what helped me. Like, I would literally tell myself, you know what, I'll just drink tomorrow. I'll get wasted tomorrow. Today, yeah, I'm gonna put it off. And then I just would eventually put it off, and then I put it off, and then the question didn't come up anymore. That was one thing. I feel like there's so many things that I wanted to like touch on, and I don't know, we don't have a whole lot of time, but if I can, well, I don't know. Should I let other people? I don't know what to do. I get nervous in front of people.
Justin, let's see if Holly has something
yeah.
to say about this, and we'll come back to you.
I just got distracted because I was waiting for you to.
Then Justin is on board again.
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead, Justin. Shoot.
No, I had an analogy that I came up with. Somebody else might have said it, but in my mind, this is a thought that I had, was when you first get sober, you're staring at this brick wall that's like right in front of your face, and you can see nothing but that brick wall. And each day that goes by, you take a step back from that wall, and suddenly you see, oh, there's a window here, there's a door here, there's a thing, oh, here's a building, and then you get further away, and suddenly you can see that it's a 13-story building, and there's all these other buildings, and then you really get a clear picture of yourself and what you're looking at. And I think the biggest problem that most people have, or at least that I had, is that I wanted to get fixed, and I wanted to happen immediately. And it's a constant sort of working towards an eventual goal. And that's the best way I can put it.
Another question? Right over here.
So, what do you guys think of the stigma of, like, in order to play a good show, you have to be loaded? And how does that relate to, like, the creativity of, like, being the mindset of, like, being under the influence of drugs versus the clarity of being able to look back and, like, be working through and feeling real emotion instead of, like, faded emotion?
It's so much better to actually just feel the real emotions. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was effed up, I just made a fool of myself. So it's just better to actually, it's so much better when you're not loaded and you're not on any other substance that's making you feel other things. You're feeling it real. You're feeling, you can allow yourself to really feel things. And it's scary, but it's so much better. I don't know.
I think Minneapolis, I think every city's like this, but I know, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a certain rock band that's like every rock person's hero in this town, and their whole gig pretty much is to just destroy themselves on stage, and I think that is like super pervasive in this city. And I think one of the, I never went to something for drinking or whatever, but I definitely have abused alcohol like most people at some point in their life in this industry. Watching my friends play drunk enough times convinced me that it wasn't a good idea. And then also when people start filming your concerts sometimes and you're seeing it, you realize all alcohol does is lower your standards for yourself. So you're not any better. You just don't have as high of standards, which also I think helps people for their anxiety. I think most people, they don't necessarily drink because they think it's going to be a better show. They drink because they're nervous and they want to feel like they're alone almost on stage. And I think that is one of the hardest things about performing is deciding, am I going to be present for this performance? And do I have to re-feel all the things I wrote about? And one thing that I've done, like as far as like a mental decision I made, because I went through, my last record was really sad, and it was like one of the hardest periods of my life. And I actually, today, am probably happier than I've ever been in my life, and my life is drastically different than it was 2 years ago. But I want to play those songs still because people value them, and so there's this weird thing where it's like, do I have to go back and feel that again in order to have an authentic performance? But you don't necessarily have to drag yourself down. It's more like, wow, this is a feeling that humans have. It's not like I have to deal with this thing I went through. It's like somebody out there is going to connect with the song, and that's important because I do think that songs about suffering can help us get out of suffering because it helps us realize we're not alone. But I think to be able to go to that place where the song isn't necessarily about your struggle anymore, it's just about the general, like, relatable struggle. You don't feel so much like I'm here under a microscope and feeling this thing that wasn't that pleasant, and now I don't want to talk to anyone anymore because now I just went back to that horrible mental space.
How about one more question here? Sweatshirt with the red writing in the back there and glasses.
I have a confession to make to everybody in this room right now. I've been dealing with chronic depression and anxiety for the past 9 years. And sometimes I just feel like I can't find a solid path to move on. And I just was wondering if any of you have ever had that problem and how you dealt with it.
Thank you. Thank you for your bravery. My first suggestion before the other folks talk here is, we're quite lucky at this school to have full-time counselors who are really good and have time, and you've got a lot of resources here, but I can certainly understand your hopelessness, and thank you for having the bravery to identify yourself as such. I'll let the other folks kind of talk about whether they've felt that sense of hopelessness. But I want to say, I'd like it if you answer this question to this gentleman here with maybe a sort of edge of what did you do when, or what do you do when you feel that hopelessness, that kind of abyss that he's talking about where it feels like there's no path for you. How do you find it? How have you found it?
I think for me, and I think standing up and saying something is a great way of doing it. Saying something, whether you're saying it to somebody next to you or going to a counselor and saying it in a, feeling okay saying it. That's the thing that we're kind of up here talking about is we all need to be okay knowing that people struggle with it, and we also through that need to be we need to understand that when you struggle through it, you get to a point where you do need to say something to somebody, or in my case, need to take medication, or you found yourself you have taken medication and now you don't, or you just need to talk to somebody. I mean, it's something that is so scary when you're there, the thought of having to say that to somebody, when you get to the other side, you realize that's that first step that you have to take. And I know just meeting with, even the people I've met here, Sarah is, I know that they're all open to talking and are here. You guys have all come here because of you want to be artists, and you're devoting all this to be an artist. It's worth your time to also make that extra step to take care of yourself and become the best artist you can by taking care of yourself and talking to people.
And be sure to remember that your struggles don't define you, and even it's good to talk about it, and I'm glad that you had the courage to say something, but also know that these people in the room now, they're not going to define you by those terms. That's something you're struggling with, but it's not who you are. Remember that.
And you're not alone. There's many, many people, maybe even some in this room, that are feeling like you do. Does anybody else want to say anything to this effect? Because I wanted to just say we're pretty much running out of time, but we're gonna keep this going for a few more minutes. I know some of you need to get to classes. I want to remind you that David needs to check you into MXP if you're leaving. Remember, there are full-time counselors on campus. If you're having issues, you don't want to share them today with us, but you want to get to somebody that's out there. And we're down in career, or Sarah is in career services along with Brian. But also, there is an expo outside in the lobby there in the atrium where there's some other resources that you can look to. I'm going to ask if there's another question in the audience here.
Well, this is kind of touches on some other things too. Somebody had brought up that how do you write now that you're sober, and how do you find those feelings? And I would like to say that I call shenanigans on the inability to do that sober. And what I mean is that you find new ways to struggle. I'm currently on the last day of a 2-week juice cleanse. So it's not the most interesting thing to write about, but you find ways to suffer. Anyway, but yeah, like my heroes used to be Charles Bukowski or Kurt Cobain, right? And that was one way of looking at things. Nowadays, my heroes are Robert Downey Jr., Jerry Stahl, Tom Waits, all these people that were doing cool stuff. They had problems, they got it together, and now they're doing the best work they've ever done. I mean, that's my opinion. So I look to that as hope for me.
How about we talk a little bit about things that just sort of like taking care of yourself? I know I haven't been drinking now for 2 years, and trying to figure out things to do to fend off boredom, which is something that alcohol, sometimes we lean on that because the excitement of being on stage, life after that is absolute boredom, and you want to keep that high going, and so you often use substances. But having to learn, how do I take care of my body? How do I stay excited and engaged? And what are good things I do for myself? Maybe you guys can talk about some of those things that you do for self-care.
I'd say this isn't for everyone, but I became a morning person. It actually was pretty life-changing.
A morning musician, really?
Yeah, it's actually really weird. I mean, I used to go out all the time. I mean, I was always out. I also used to always be busy, and that for me is definitely what's changed in my self-care. Is I used to have almost like a destructive ambition where I was willing to sacrifice my own physical health, my own mental health. I just ran myself into the ground. Quite literally working 60-hour weeks and playing a few shows a week, being in more than one band, and that was really stupid, and ended up just kind of destroying me. So there's two things in the last year, even though most people wouldn't think that these were the most significant parts of my life change. Becoming a morning person and eating breakfast every day. Even if you're not a morning person, treating your body well, first of all, your mind works better, and when you read things, you get more out of it. I think for me, one of the best parts of music is how you start connecting all these disconnected things. That street sign just made me think of this relationship I have, and now I'm connecting them. And your brain just fires faster, and the thoughts you have are more interesting because they're from a higher level of thinking. And I think that is inspiring to make you want to take care of yourself because you almost become more interesting. It's not just the same old struggle, I drank too much and now I'm hungover and it's really dramatic and oh my goodness. And then, it's that's not that interesting. It's really the same old boring stuff you've heard about. And I think when you take care of yourself, it's almost addicting because you no longer want to destroy yourself because it feels too good to have your health and to be treating your family and friends well. It feels really good.
Justin, you talked about your juicing, juice fasting as one thing that you've done that feels good for yourself. What are some other things that you do?
Well, I just, when you were talking, it made me think of just the simple fact, and this may sound goofy and weird, but I'm going to say it anyway, I like myself today. And for a long time, I didn't, and I feel like that fueled a lot of my behaviors. And, and this might not be what everybody should do, but I have a little of the OCD qualities, and every morning I get up and I've got a big board, and I just write down all the things I'm gonna do. I mean, as stupid as get the mail, take out the garbage, do all this stuff, and I just fill this list with things to do so that I'm constantly just doing and being, and it doesn't allow me time to let my mind go crazy. And that's, I don't know, for some reason that's kind of, to me, that makes sense, and it feels good because, you know, I accomplished some things. So that, I don't know, you kind of mentioned over here that sometimes you feel like, oh, I can't write, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. But then whenever I get to those moments, oh, I better go take out the garbage, and I'll do this thing and do that thing. I did something great, and then I'll go back to this, and then I'll write, and then I'll go do this thing over here. And it allows me to keep moving and to keep doing, and I don't ever get bored. I oftentimes get exhausted, but, you know, I don't know.
Johnny, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just, you know, for me, like, surrounding yourself with people, like Holly was saying, surrounding yourself with people and being okay to sometimes take yourself out of situations that, I mean, I was really afraid that me not being in the bars and not being, you know, at parties and stuff would diminish my networking or whatever, you know, like musicians, we all, you know, but then actually it's given me a lot of a clearer picture on what I'm doing, and it's okay to, like, you know, it's okay to embrace what you actually think is fun instead of, because pretty much everybody enjoys getting messed up, you know, and once you get past that, you know, getting messed up can start to hurt you. And once you get past that and realize that you don't actually, that's not something you base your life on, that's not something that makes you happy, and just finding those things that make you happy. And sad to say that, like, the Golden Girls, you know, the TV show, I love it, makes me happy, you know. Yeah, exactly. See, there's some Golden Girls fans out there.
We're gonna keep going here, and thanks for sticking around. Maybe we'll go another couple of minutes. I was just gonna play a song. Some of you may know my own experiences. I had a 21-year-old son who committed suicide last year and had been struggling with mental illness for a while. We were very close. He certainly had a great deal of love in his life and a whole bunch of options for therapy and meds. And no matter what we tried to do for him and what he tried to do for himself, he found himself in that incredibly, horribly hopeless place where there was no possibility of a better life. And that was agonizing to be a part of that. I struggle with my own mental health issues, and a few months before he committed suicide, I decided perhaps I can reach him if I no longer use any substances, and I level the playing field so that he sees, hey, maybe if I take care of myself, things will change. And it still didn't work. I wrote a song recently. I've had kind of a rough summer, and I haven't used for a while, so I was kind of puzzled, like, I'm doing everything right. I'm taking care of myself. Why am I so down? Why am I feeling hopeless at this time? And I started to think about something, which is that mental illness is something that we don't ever erase, those of us that have it in our lives. We figure out ways to cope with it, to sort of mitigate it, meaning like make it not as severe in our lives. But it's always there. And the trick is to try and figure out as many things that you can do to get through and to find hope. And I started to think about mental illness as a friend, but kind of like on Seinfeld, the way Newman is a friend. Like, not a great friend, but kind of a necessary part of the plot line. You need to have a Newman there, and you need to have a little bit of, you need to have an understanding that you can't always get rid of this thing and it comes back periodically. So I called this song, This Friend Is Not a Friend. You're walking down the street and someone pats your back from behind. You're pleased to see them, it's a friend, it's been a while. you're surprised. This friend is not a friend, he steals your breath, he ruins you, he's a lion. Confinement to a lovely cage is still confinement just the same. I call you out, I beg your pardon, sue for peace, I call your name. This friend is not a friend, he steals your breath, ruins men, he's a lion. On a full tank of gas, can you make amends? But a fond farewell to fair weather friends. Are the criminals in your secret past with a cave? Oblivion and grudge left in my mind, rent free, they wouldn't ever sign the lease, evicted, thrown into the cleansing blaze. You never cease to upbraid, you never cease to upbraid. The gods have given, much taken, way more. Who says the score can even up? Hope is the wounded beast that should never be put out of its misery. This friend is not a friend, he steals your breath, ruins men, he's a lion. On a full tank of gas, can you make amends? Bid a fond farewell to fair weather friends. Harbor criminals in your secret past, will you cave? Oblivion and grudge left in my mind, rent free, they would have never signed the lease, evicted, thrown into the cleansing blaze. You never cease to upbraid, you never cease to upbraid. How about, since you're sticking around, a few more questions? There was a young woman here in the gray sweatshirt. You had a question before. Go ahead. Yeah, you.
You want to go first?
I saw a counselor for a while, and that really helped me. I was on medication for a little while, antidepressant. And I really needed it at that time in my life, and I can say that I don't feel like I need it today. I can't say that I won't ever need it again in my life. I think that this life is a journey, and we have different, there's different things that we need at different times in our life. And right now I'm in a really good place, and I don't feel like I need it, and I was able to get off of that. But really focusing on myself and not focusing on his recovery, focusing on my recovery, and realizing that I had to go through a recovery too, and I needed to take time for myself and take care of myself, and realizing that that was okay was huge. It was huge that I got to have a recovery too, and that really helped me. A lot of Al-Anon material. I didn't go to too many meetings, because things, really did start to get better. Counseling really helped. But just taking time for me, doing things that I need to grow as a person, and I know that I thrive. Writing down goals, whether it's just to mop the floor or where I want to be next year, little goals, things that I want to do for my life. And yeah, even just a list of like cleaning the house and just doing it that week. I want to get that done. writing and running, being good to my body and not in a sick way, not like in a like unhealthy way, but just being healthy, working out, feeling good about myself, as well as being there for Johnny and being a good partner.
Your question was about when I chose to, or
What made you?
what made me? Well, definitely there was a part of me that realized that, I had been living this life and realized that it wasn't headed in any other direction but down. I mean, as much as I tried to look at it from other sides and be like, oh no, it's just I'm just in a down period, or this is just a rough patch. I really came to a realization that after years of living drinking and then doing heavier drugs, I actually was a meth addict. That it wasn't a phase, or it wasn't it wasn't something that I'd get out of once I got into my 30s or something. It was definitely like just a downward spiral, and everyone knows where down goes. It ends at death or at jail, or something like that. And so I had this moment. I'd like to think it was my one moment of clarity where I was like, well, okay, so I know that this will get me to death or jail, and I know what those are. So I don't know what getting sober will get me. Maybe I'll be horribly unhappy, or, who knows, but at least I don't know where that's going to take me. And that's when I chose to ask for help, and I made that phone call. I actually called my mom, who I told Molly several times that I was going to get sober just because I was telling her what I felt like I should say. But finally, when I was ready, I didn't make the overture to Molly. I knew that, she'd heard it a million times. I made it to somebody who was like, okay, you're checking in tomorrow, and so I think just embracing the unknown, knowing that unknown can be better, unknown can be good.
How about one more question before we sort of retire? In the back there.
This kind of question for all of you. What would you say is the hardest part when transitioning from that lifestyle of partying all the time and doing whatever to living your life of sobriety and mental clarity?
Having patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, dealing with the using substances creates excitement and drama, and taking that part out of the equation and not having that anymore. I mentioned before this whole idea of boredom, and how do you find what I would call estimable activities, like good stuff to do, to avoid, especially when you're surrounded by so many people. Those of us that are on stage, we're around alcohol and drugs constantly. In a professional setting, it's being offered to us. Sometimes it's in our dressing room, lots of it. Not necessarily the drugs, but lots of booze usually. And trying to figure out what can I do to sort of find a personal space for myself so this isn't threatening to me or bothering me emotionally.
I think I was like addicted to distraction, and I made way too many friends, kind of, so that I would always be receiving text messages and emails, and like there was always something that I could say yes to keep me busy. And once I decided to slow down and actually say, "Hi, Holly, nice to meet you. I haven't talked to you in like 15 years." The hardest part was actually feeling guilty for saying no all the time, and feeling like, because I feel like I've lost friends, not because someone was mad at me or I was mad at them. I'm just not around anymore. And I think for me that's been like a little bit weird. And part of me becoming a morning person was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to keep being busy, I just need to go to sleep early, because for the most part, when I was doing things that were destructive, it was, late at night. And there's still people that I wish I could see every day, but I don't get to, because the only time they hang out is after 10 p.m. and they're usually out of their mind. So, yeah.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think if I was gonna reiterate something to you all, that you've chosen to come to this school to be a better musician, and to realize that making it as an artist isn't a 40-yard dash, and so that it's a path that you're on. It's more like long distance running, and so that patience aspect, or that knowing that you don't have to get it all together by next week. It's not a struggle in a horrible way. It's a struggle in a way that's like, hey, I stepped up on this step. This is pretty cool. I wonder what the next step is like, and you just build yourself up, and so yeah, the patience and just making small steps and going in the right direction instead of heading the way that I was.
Johnny the other day was telling me that he was having a conversation with a friend of his. They were actually talking about relationships. And one of the things Johnny said, and it's totally true, and he's like, happiness is not excitement. And to realize that is like, yeah, that's so true. Like,
excitement is excitement.
Excitement is exciting, but I mean, you can have a really exciting night of like partying all night, but you feel like shit the next day, and the cycle continues. And if you just get stuck in that, you end up feeling so lost. But you keep on doing it because that's just what you do, and that's all you know, and it becomes all you know. But I would encourage you, if you are stuck in that, like to, for me, I really like doing things outdoors. And if you're not an outdoorsy person, like, I don't know, I just think that as human beings, like, we really, we really find happiness, and there's something about being in nature that makes us feel like we have a purpose. I don't know. And that for me makes all the difference, to feel like my life has a purpose.
That's a great way to wrap it up here. I want to thank Holly Hansen, Justin Pierre, Molly Moore, and Johnny Solomon for candidly sharing their experiences. I want to thank